Before we get into this special weekend edition of Just the Truth, let me tell you about the latest special from Mike Lindell at MyPillow. The standard MyPillow, normally $49.98 for a limited time only, just $14.88 with promo code Joey. Go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener specials, and see all the specials. There's a limited quantity of just 10 at this special price. That's $14.88 with promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Joining me now is Representative Mike Burns from the northern part of Greenville County, one of the sponsors of legislation that would fundamentally change how South Carolina conducts party primaries. Right now, South Carolina operates under what is considered an open primary system, meaning any registered voter can choose which party's primary to vote in, regardless of their party affiliation. Representative Burns is backing legislation that would close those primaries, requiring voters to register with a party in advance if they want to help select that party's nominee. Supporters say it's about protecting party integrity, letting Republicans choose Republican candidates. Critics warn it could reduce participation, maybe shut independents out of meaningful elections in a state where many races are decided in the primary. Representative Mike Burns joins us today. Welcome, my friend. It's always a pleasure, and thanks for your time today.
Joey, Happy New Year to you and your listeners. Thank you for having me on. It's been a 13-year journey for me to try to get the primaries closed, and perhaps we're certainly closer than we've been. I have a bill. There's a competing bill, and I'm pushing House Bill 3310, which I think is the stronger of the two bills. And we'll see where this goes. We actually had a hearing scheduled in subcommittee this past week, and the folks weighed in so vehemently because there were 4 bills scheduled in a 1-hour period this week, and people started rattling their swords because it was obvious my bill was 4th, and it wasn't going to be heard. It wasn't going to be heard in the hour period that was designated. So now it's been moved to next Wednesday at 12 o'clock. And oddly enough, it was second up in a 2-hour period. Now it's, again, 4th up in a 2-hour period. So we'll see what happens.
Well, I don't think that it can be ignored because I don't know that I've seen this much debate on social media and phone calls and emails about a particular issue. And this is something that's been brewing for a number of years. And let's just kind of back up for a minute there for listeners who may not follow party politics quite as closely as you and I do, Representative Burns. What problem are you trying to solve with this closed primary legislation?
Well, we had a good example right here in the local Greenville House race just a couple of weeks ago in December. And we had open, active Democrats soliciting their people all over social media to get out and vote to defeat the strongest, we thought was the strongest Republican candidate, who was ultimately elected, which was is now Representative Diane Mitchell. And she only prevailed by 22 votes. And the Democrats actively got out and crossed over, trying to keep her from getting in. And when races are that close, you know, a little influence and a little crossover goes a long way, and that's what we're trying to stop. We believe Democrats should be able to elect their candidates, and Republicans should be able to elect theirs and not have the crossover. And the main difference between the two bills is my bill is a stronger bill, 3310, which would close the primaries and make Republicans elect Republicans. And, of course, Democrats.
Yeah.
And the competing bill will allow independent, unaffiliated voters to cross in and vote just like they're Republicans.
Right.
And that's where the objection lies with a lot of us.
Yeah. Representative Mike Burns is my guest today, and we're talking about legislation that's getting a lot of attention. 2 competing bills, House Bill 3310, which is the bill that Representative Burns is a sponsor of, and then House Bill 3643, an opposing bill. Both bills are good. They're just differences in there. They both would close the primary. They just have different methods in doing so. And as the system is right now, Representative Burns, you don't register as a Republican or a Democrat in South Carolina. Now, you can only vote in one primary. If you vote in a Republican primary, then you can't vote in the Democrat primary, right?
That's correct. That's absolutely correct.
So
but you can vote whomever you want to vote in the general, but you can only vote in one primary.
Yeah.
But you get to choose. We have open primaries, and depending on which race you want to get into, you can go vote Republican this year, and you can go vote Democrat next year. Wherever there's an inkling where you have a favorability, you want to go vote, you're open to do that now. We're trying to shut that down and let only Republicans or only Democrats elect their candidates.
Yeah. So, and this is something that has a lot of support. I mean, supporters point to the 2024 Republican advisory ballot question, where 73% of GOP primary voters supports closing primaries. I guess we're just now to the point of exactly how we do that. Now, some of the opponents of your bill and the other bill, 3643, they argue, well, you're going to make it hard for voters. Where does that leave independents? And we have a pretty good percentage of independents, people who don't like to declare either way. And some say, well, you're going to preclude them from participating. What's your response to that?
My response to that would be they'll get to participate in the general election. Once again, it's a Republican primary. Republicans put on their primary, same with the Democrats. So who believes, that anybody but Republicans should elect their candidates? When I first filed this bill many years ago, the then chair of the judiciary in the South Carolina House secretly, unpublicly, non-publicly said, this is a good bill, but it'll never go anywhere while I'm chair because, quite frankly, I can't get reelected if this is the law.
Yeah.
And so it makes a difference. And so, you got a few independents across the state that you can make the case they can't go vote. But think about all of the thousands and thousands of Republicans you're taking the will of their vote out for their primary candidate. I mean, look at the greater damage it's done.
Yeah. Talk with us, Representative Burns, about some of the specific differences between your bill, 3310, and the opposing bill, 3643. What are some of the specific differences between these two bills?
Well, the huge glaring difference, number one, is, as I've said over and over while we've been talking, that Republicans would elect Republicans. No crossover, unaffiliated, independent voters would be able to come in and remove the will of the people in the party. And in the competing bill, 3643, the independents will be able to come in and vote. And to be frank, I'm a co-sponsor on the other bill because it will improve the situation. But it's like I used yesterday, the analogy at the press conference. You had the old country song by Gene Shepherd. If you've never had filet mignon, peanut butter tastes just fine. These two bills, one's peanut butter, one's filet.
So I want to be clear here, because I think this is one of the most confusing parts of this. So 3643 would allow an independent voter to vote in a primary, but by casting that vote, then they would be automatically registered for that party. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And I think that's a good idea, except all they got to do is go unregister after the thing's over and reestablish themselves as independent. And all they've done, again, is come in, pollute the will of the Republicans, or potentially pollute the will of the Republicans, and then go back to their independent, unaffiliated status. And it's just not fair to the Republicans across the state. Same with the Democrats. Back in the day, a friend of yours and mine, Howell Clyburn, was the minority leader for the Republicans.
Yep.
Back, decades ago. He was the first majority leader. And, he told me they used to do the same thing. Republicans would cross over to elect the Democrats back then and help pollute the Democrat election. Right's right. And if the Republicans are going to put on their primary, the Democrats are going to go the expense and put on their primary, their people ought to elect their candidate. And crossover shouldn't be allowed to do that.
With me today, Representative Mike Burns, who is a sponsor of 3310, the bill that a lot of people are rallying around, getting behind as being the stronger of the two bills to close primaries. One of the other differences, though, Representative Burns, is as it pertains to candidates. And 3643 has some limitations about that. As I understand it, candidates would have to have had voted in 2 of the last 3 statewide primaries for the party that they want to run for. Now, at a time when, for years now, we've heard Republicans say we got to get the rhinos out of the party. To me, that sounds like a pretty good thing. But some are saying, well, that's just limiting who can run, and that's not a good thing. Your response to that?
Well, I hate to say it, but both things are kind of true at the same time. I'm a big proponent of not letting people cross over and pollute, as we've talked about. So, the 2 out of 3 rule for me personally, I like that rule. I like it in the other bill. But, it's got statewide implications right now, and everybody's saying that is the David Pasco rule. It's going to eliminate him possibly from being able to cross over and run as Republican. And, you got a real challenge there because Mr. Pasco is going around the state. He's done a good job of fighting corruption in his former job as a prosecutor, as a Democrat. And a lot of these same people who don't want crossovers coming in would appreciate Pasco if he got elected cleaning up Columbia.
Yeah.
I'm not endorsing Pasco. I don't know who I'm going to end up voting for. But that's created quite a stir, and, you're exactly right. I agree with you that we have for years, we don't want people crossing over into the party who are really not Republicans and who don't cling to the Republican platform. And I point out, just like getting rid of abortion is part of the Republican platform, you also have closing the primaries as part of the Republican platform.
Yeah.
And we've been trying to do this forever, and it takes far too long. This is 13 years for me and probably a 20-year journey for some people trying to get to the point that we are next week.
Yep.
And, it looks like we're going to make improvement on either bill getting passed. But if we're going to go the trouble to pass one, I sure would like to see the stronger of the 2 bills get passed.
Absolutely. Representative Mike Burns is my guest today. And if you're not familiar with what Representative Burns is talking about, David Pasco is a solicitor in the lower part of the state. He's been elected as a Democrat for years. He endorsed Joe Biden for president. He's running for the nomination, the Republican nomination for Attorney General, as Alan Wilson is not seeking another term. He's running for governor. So that's created quite a bit of discussion here because under this law, David Pasco would not be allowed to run because he has not voted in Republican primaries previously. Now, again, there's a lot of groups out there who've been rallying against closing the primaries for the primary reason to keep people like David Pasco out of races like this. But that's just one of those things. Now, is there a chance, Representative Burns, that there might be that these 2 bills, the best of the 2 bills, might be combined to come up with the final product?
A week ago, I would have told you there's not a chance, but the people have spoken. During the last week, they have complained so much that the subcommittee hearing has been lengthened in time. It's been moved to a different week to accommodate some of this. So the people are actually being heard, and I'd encourage them not to give up now. But the longer this goes, the better chance we got of getting a stronger bill out of it. And if it's a combination of the 2 bills, so be it. We want to get the strongest bill that we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I'd personally like to have the strongest bill, 3310, but...
Well, look, this has been one of those topics that we have discussed for years and years and years, and it's taken Mike Burns to get this thing moving, and I appreciate what you've done on this. One final question for you before I let you go today, Representative Burns. There's some Republicans who oppose the idea of closing the primaries altogether. Now, I'm told, and I'm interested if you've heard this, that Governor McMaster has said he would potentially veto a bill that would close the primaries. Is that the case?
I haven't heard that he said that, but I will tell you there are a good number of Republicans who absolutely don't want to see this pass in any form. And, it's kind of reminiscent of what I told you earlier. Some of these guys won't be able to get reelected if this passes.
Yeah.
So they're not for it.
Yeah. Representative Mike Burns, it's always a pleasure to catch up with you, my friend. And again, I appreciate what you do. And if anybody can get this done, Mike Burns can do it.
Well, we're going to keep trying. 13 years, we'll keep trying. Okay, thanks a lot for the time this morning, and I appreciate it. Appreciate what you do every week.
Sure.
Thank you.
Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Dave Crooks is the executive director of Evans Training Center, a Christ-centered residential recovery ministry that's right here in the Upstate. Evans Training Center operates a 40-week regeneration program for men battling addiction. The program is built around discipleship, community, vocational training, and here's the best part. It's all rooted in the hope and freedom found in Jesus Christ. Under Dave's leadership, the center has grown significantly, helping men rebuild their lives, restore families, and step into a future of purpose and freedom. Dave, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Joey.
Before we get into the details of the great work that you guys are doing at Evans Training Center, Dave, let's talk about your personal story, because when you work with these men, you can truly say you know what they're experiencing because you've been there yourself, right?
Yeah, that's right, Joey. I got into this business the hard way, like a lot of us do, and it's crazy to think about because for me, I was 21 years old when I checked into a place just like this in Florida. I'm 43 now. And it's kind of surreal to think about all that's happened in my life. When I went to that program for help, I really just wanted to get sober. That was it. I just wanted to feel okay in my own skin for once in my life. Little did I know that God had a much bigger purpose for me than just getting sober. And, this week was surreal for me because we had a young man come into our program from jail, and I was looking at him. I hadn't met him yet, and he looked so young. And I found out he was 21 years old, and he had just spent 17 months in jail and came straight from jail here to our program. And just looking at him, I thought, oh, my gosh, that's me. That's me. 22 years ago. And I was able to speak to him and say, hey, you're not too young to be doing this right now. In fact, you have no idea the plan that God may have for your life. You're in the right spot, son.
Yeah.
And oh man, that was so long. It was so long ago, but it feels like it was just yesterday.
Right. Yeah. Time is like that, isn't it? Dave, Evans Training Center calls itself a regeneration ministry, not just a recovery program. What's the distinction between regeneration and recovery?
Yeah, good question. I guess our philosophy would be sometimes we'll teach in the classroom and we'll say if you rehab someone, essentially what you're doing is getting them back to the former state that they were in prior to injury, if you think about a physical rehab situation. In this case, in many cases anyways, the prior state that people were in before they got to a place like this was part of the problem. So returning them back to a sober mind state just leads them back to that place where they were in a lot of pain that they wanted to medicate for some reason in the first place. Our perspective would be, in Christ, you're a new creation. And we don't just want to patch up the old man, but a person who puts their faith in Christ and is reborn by the Spirit has a brand new life which emerges inside, and we want to foster and grow and nurture that life and just take someone on a totally different path from what they were on. And as a result of that Christian walk of faith, it tends to be that the addiction piece over time just fades away into the background. And that's our philosophy and how we try to go at it.
Yeah. Take us through what a man can expect when he arrives at Evans Training Center, from the induction phase to discipleship, vocational training. What are the key elements that lead to this lasting change that you're working toward?
Sure. So when a guy comes here, First of all, it's a culture shock because he's going to be surrounded by about 30 other men, all who come from where he came from, except they're not going to be mean and have bad attitudes and things like that. They're going to be showing a tremendous amount of love. So one of the first things that's really overwhelming for a guy is to have a bunch of guys just like him hugging him and saying, welcome, I love you, I know where you're at, it's going to be okay. That in itself is just kind of weird. A guy, for example, there's a guy who came into our program a few weeks ago, and this is an extreme case, but he spent 27 years in prison, and then from prison got in a bus and came here and was dropped off on our doorstep unannounced. That's not typically how we would bring someone into the program, but it's just how it happened this time. So you could imagine the shock of coming from a prison environment for that amount of time to then coming into another environment full of men saying, I love you, and hugging you.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot to take in.
Big difference for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But he'll be welcomed, and then he gets a big brother, which is just somebody who's been here a little bit longer and is going to guide him through those initial phases to make sure he knows everything he needs to know and is watching out for him. And then he's going to start going to classes. So kind of our daily grind is some Christian discipleship classes in the morning time, and those start out very light and very grace-filled and very cookies on the bottom shelf sort of stuff in the beginning. And then as a guy progresses through the program, builds trusting relationships, learns to start to be vulnerable, those classes kind of ramp up in intensity. And we're trying to deal with why are you here? Why did God lead you to this place? We are an extreme option in our community. 10 months long, I think we may be the most extreme option available. And we kind of believe that if God has led somebody to this program, probably they're in real danger of dying if something doesn't happen. Because why else would he bring them to such an extreme place? So as we build relationship with these guys, we're trying to wrap our mind around their individual situations and then trying to deal with them on an individual basis and kind of dig out, why are you doing this to yourself? We try to deal with all that stuff. So on the front end, it's heavy on learning to take personal responsibility for your daily decisions and attitudes, learning how to have a daily quiet time with the Lord that's real and relevant. They're writing down prayers in their journals and turning those in, and staff is meeting with them and talking about those things that are ending up in their journals, and just trying to foster an environment of openness and vulnerability and humility. And then as they begin to trust us with more and more, God begins to heal them deeper and deeper as they get stuff out, stuff that's happened to them and frankly, stuff that they have happened to. There's a mixture of shame for things they've done and then some shame for things that have been happening to them as well. And so we just kind of progress through all of that. So that's the morning time. So 5 days a week in the mornings, they're having classes. And then after class time, our staff, if you work on staff at Evans, a couple things are true about you most of the time. One, you're a man who's walked in these guys' shoes. So almost every one of our staff teachers has been there and done that. So a guy can't say, well, you just don't understand. All of our staff can say, no, I do understand.
Yeah.
You don't understand, and let me show you the way.
Yeah.
But if you work here, you have your classroom hat, and then you have your job site supervisory hat. So part of the way that we set these guys up for success in the future is we make sure that while they're here, they learn a solid trade. And so for us, that's professional painting and professional landscaping, both commercial and residential. So class time happens, then we break, and they go with their teachers into the community, and we do painting and landscaping projects around town. We do that for about 5 hours a day, Monday through Friday. And that's where they learn a skill set but then also how to have a healthy work ethic and a positive attitude. That's also how we help them reintegrate back into the community, so that when this long program is over, they don't feel like aliens when they go back out into the community. They've already been in the community. They've already had to go into gas stations and pass up the alcohol, be in people's houses and not rifle through medicine cabinets, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then additionally, in a long-term program like this, you just go nuts if you sit in the classroom all day thinking about all the reasons why you're there. A man needs to put his hands to something productive, and have some self-respect for what he did that day, get his mind off of his problems and just do something positive. So they get that aspect of things as well. And that helps us pay the bills around here,
Sure.
frankly. About half of our finances come from donations from the community, and the other half is that work that we do in the community of painting and landscaping. And that allows us to keep everything free for the guys who are
Yeah.
part of the program. So they don't have to pay anything to come here. Their deal is their work ethic during the time that they're here. They're investing in their own recovery, which we feel like that's the right thing to do for them too, to take responsibility for your life and put, as long as you're working hard on you and putting into the pot, then we're going to work with you. But one without the other doesn't work right.
Yeah. Our guest today is Dave Crooks. He's Executive Director of Evans Training Center, a Christ-centered residential recovery ministry here in the Upstate. If you'd like additional information about Evans, go to evanstc.org, evanstc.org. You've talked about the program, and I've looked at your website. You've got some powerful stories of transformation of these men coming out of your program. And you've talked about the program itself. What does success look like, and how do you help the men after they leave the program to be able to maintain that?
That's such a critical question. I'm going to start with the second part of your question. How do we help them keep going? We're aware in this industry as a whole, those of us who are operating long-term programs, we're aware of the risk of guys becoming institutionalized and being in a place like this so long. And I don't know if you remember years ago, I'm sure you do, that the Biggest Loser show.
Oh, yeah.
That was on TV, and people would go to the ranch and lose a ton of weight, and then they'd be interviewed years later and they put all the weight back on. And so we talk about that regularly and trying to make sure that we don't do that to these guys, that we don't create an environment where they're sober here but then can't walk it out in life. So to that end, we have transitional housing that we operate and staff, and we make that available to our program graduates. So they have options when this is over to transition right into our housing, where they can then get their own jobs, but they're required to go through another process for a year where they're showing up to a weekly meeting of their peers, led by a pastor. They're held accountable. They're drug tested. And we kind of know that we're going to get the best possible results long term if we can stay in this guy's sphere of influence for around 3 years. Yeah. That's kind of the magic number where this stopped being a program and it started just becoming this person's lifestyle.
Yeah.
So to the degree that people allow us to stay in their world for that amount of time and even longer, we try to do that. And at this point, after operating for 15 years, there's a large alumni presence in our area, and they are so great about just wrapping up our graduates. They come out to dinner during the week and form relationships even before graduation. So it's kind of an easy transition to say, okay, the program's over. Good job. Now come with me and let me show you how to do this out here. So again, as much as guys let us do that, we try to do it. Some don't want that level of help, and we can't control that. And as far as success goes, people want to know, does this work? A mom wants to know her son's going to be okay. We measure success here in a couple of different ways. If you were in our private staff meeting behind the scenes that we're not advertising to the public, and I realize now I'm on public radio, part of our success is, has this guy put his faith in Christ? And does he have spiritual life going on inside of him that's real? We really are aiming at that, because even if the guy doesn't finish the program, or even if he bumps his head a couple times after the fact, we know that if the Spirit of God is in him, well, the Bible says that he who began a good work in you will complete it. And so we trust that. We minister the gospel to them, and we're looking for them to put faith in Christ. And even if something weird happens along the way in their process here, God will keep working on them out there. And I've got lots of neat stories about that. Guys who hadn't finished but reach out years later are doing great because they just couldn't shake that Spirit of God in them.
Yeah.
And God put new relationships in their path, etc.
Yeah.
What we aim for is, and what we try to measure, is what is this guy doing a year from the date he graduates? And if he's got a job, a safe place to live, and is in relationship with the people around him and sober, we feel like we've done a good job helping that guy get set up for success. And we know over the past, we've been measuring for about 6 or 7 years, and we know that it's about 8 out of 10 of our graduates can tick those boxes. So we feel like we're making an impact with the group of guys that we're trying to help.
Yeah. Wow. Dave, thank you for your time today, and especially for what you guys are doing in the community. Again, if you'd like additional information, maybe you have someone in your family who's struggling, that you think maybe Evans Training Center can help, go to their website, evanstc.org, evanstc.org. And if you appreciate what this ministry is doing and you can offer some financial support, do that as well. You can donate online. Just go to evanstc.org. Dave, again, thanks for your time.
That's it for this special weekend edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com, and I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.